Hello, and welcome to the Christian Indie Writers Podcast, where we inform, encourage, and support Christian indie writers on their journey to publication. I'm Jamie Hirschberger. I write short fiction under the pen name J.R. Nichols.
I'm Rhonda Hagerman, and I write fiction and nonfiction, and now I owe Jamie $5.
I am Jennifer Carl Tong, and I write historical Christian romance, and I do not owe Jamie $5 because it wasn't supposed to be that one. It was supposed to be the other thing, right? Wasn't it? No, I don't remember. That's what I write.
I'm Christina Catane, and I write in multiple genres, including Christian dystopian fiction. And there are things I won't do for $5.
Well, anyway, I was having a little bit of fun earlier and playing around with different voices and things. And so I really like accents. You know what I'm saying? And I like to kind of play around with them and everything. But then like someone said, like, I don't know if doing an accent, you know, is going to offend people or whatever. But so anyway, I ditched the accent and I did an ASMR intro. Too bad I don't have like the two microphones. If you don't know what ASMR is, just look it up or something. Maybe we can talk about it.
I like doing accents too. My favorite is a really thick Michigan accent. That's super annoying. I'm really good at that one.
Very good at that one.
Yeah. I like to use it on the podcast whenever possible.
Yeah, it's like seamless too. Okay, so I want to get us back on track if that's possible. And so we have to go around and say, "What's up, everybody? What's up, Tina? How you doing up there?"
Oh, you know, I'm getting over this crud that I got. Still coughing a little bit, but I've really just been kind of taking it easy and eating lots of healthy food to try to kick it in the butt. And there's really not a lot going on around here.
Well, we're so glad that you're improving. I mean, you know, it seems like that chest cold stuff can just hang around forever. And then don't you just forget what it's like even to feel well and healthy and you feel like, oh, I can't wait till the day when I wake up and I'm not coughing, you know?
Yeah, well, most viruses last 10 days on average. And today's day 10, so I'm hoping they'll wake up tomorrow and everything will be golden.
There's like two types of people in the world. The people who know exactly how many days they should expect. And the people like me who are just like, I will suffer just however long and have no clue. I don't know if it would be better or worse to know how many more days of suffering that I have left.
It depends on where you are in the count.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I worked for a pediatrician and a family doctor. And I was the lady who, like, if you called the doctor's office to ask if you should come to the doctor, I was the lady you talked to who would tell you, like, yeah, you need to see the doctor. Or, no, just give your kid breast and fluids or whatever. So, that's why I know that little tidbit of information, because I said it 100 million times over the 10 years that I worked for the pediatrician. Most colds last about 10 days, and if the kid is sick beyond 10 days, then they should probably be seen because maybe there's an infection.
Well, there's your tip. There's your tidbit of the day. And now that I've said tidbit, I want pineapple. What's up with you, Rhonda?
Well, let's see. Right now I'm in Florida. We are opening my mother-in-law's home right now, so she can be down here for 6 months, lucky lady. And also get a little bit of beach time. So that is what's up with me. And
you're in Florida. So hold up, because the last time we talked to you, you were like in Rogers City. And so
yes,
she's not coming up in the mitten. She's going down to the other peninsula.
Yes.
Where everybody's favorite podcast host permanently lives.
Yes, that one.
And
my favorite.
Anyway, that's great.
I don't live down there. What are you talking about?
All right. Well, so good for you that you get to come down here and explore and be in the wonderful weather.
Yes.
What's up with you, Jen? And what's the weather like where you are?
The weather is actually, it's cold, but you see all the sun coming
Yay!
through. It is actually pretty sunny here in Michigan today. I should move this so you can see. This is the only thing that Jamie will be jealous of because it is chilly outside, but the leaves, the colors here in Michigan this year are probably the most beautiful it has been in several years, because there's lots of falls that it starts to get beautiful, and then we get torrential downpours and it just kind of knocks the leaves off. But this year, it's just gorgeous. We have, I'm looking out my front window here, like Jamie, like my dining room, like it's just all gold and orange and red across the street. It's just beautiful here right now.
It's my favorite. Fall in Michigan is my favorite.
I know, and it's so fun for me even on Instagram, because I've not been posting on social media a lot, and I'll say why in a second. But I've still kind of been going on and looking, and on Instagram, I'm realizing the number of people that actually live in Michigan that I didn't realize that I follow, that follow me, that are authors or whatnot, because they're posting pictures and saying Michigan's the best in the fall. And I'm like, oh, yes, it is. I agree. So
I love that. I love it. I'm wondering if eventually I'll kind of, maybe when I'm an empty nester, I'll be there around the time of my birthday, because especially if you get up into the UP, it's so beautiful.
Yes,
it really is.
It's probably past peak season right now in the UP, and it's peak here, I would say. But yeah,
so our audience has been praying for you, and I'm sure everybody would kind of like to know how you're doing. If you want to share whatever about that.
Yeah. So as the ladies shared, I did lose my aunt a few weeks ago now, and I know that we all have family and we all have people, we all have aunts and uncles, but my aunt, as the ladies know, was not just a normal aunt. She was like a second mom to me. And just back in July was when we first got the diagnosis, and we thought we had like a year and a half, and we didn't. And so even though we knew it was coming, it still was a shock for me, and it's really hard for me still. It's like losing a parent, and she and I were very, very close. And so I've been absent not only through the mourning process, through like the funeral and like that, but it is on my brother, my dad, and myself to take care of her estate and everything in it. She was a widow. My uncle passed away a couple of years ago, who I was also very, very close to.
In November.
So for the past several years, my grandmother died, and they discovered cancer. I don't know. That was right before you ladies and I got together for the first time. If you remember, I believe I still had the bandaging on me when we had our first meeting. And after my surgery, and my grandma died, I was in the hospital. They were getting ready to release me, and my husband came in and told me my grandma had passed away, who I was also very close to. The next year, my uncle passed away in November. These are both Novembers. And then last year, I lost another uncle who I wasn't as close to, but I did dearly love, passed away like in August. And then my husband's father passed away at the end of October last year, right before Nano. And then this year, my aunt passed away. So I almost feel like it's the Nano curse for me. So we'll talk about Nano in a little bit, but it has been very difficult. I have not been writing. I have been very MIA, but it's what I need right now. And it is a season in my life that I just have to get through, because it's such a important part of like the core of who I am. This woman was very influential in my life. So yeah, so that's what I've been doing. Lots of work at her house every single day. I'm over there. Sometimes we pick up the girls from school and we go over there, and we even have dinner there, and we're working and doing stuff. And because it was a second home to them too. So it's not like it's out of the ordinary to be over there at her house. So that's where I've been. And I really appreciate you ladies giving me the time that I needed. I also have to say, I know I've taken a lot of time this morning for my what's up.
No, you do what you need to do.
I have to say, I have thoroughly enjoyed listening and watching this podcast. When you're part of the podcast, you we enjoy it because we're friends and we love doing this. And we love talking about writing and encouraging each other. But there's still, I think, a little part of you in the back of your mind that thinks, gosh, does anyone care? Are we doing anything? But the past couple of weeks, I know 3 weeks ago, you guys suspended the podcast for me, and I really appreciated that, because that was the week that she had passed, and that was actually the day she passed. And then the past 2 weeks, I've been listening and watching, and you guys did awesome. Like, I enjoyed it. It was informative. I just felt like, gosh, yes, this is what we wanted. We wanted to be able to provide something for others. And I think that you guys nailed it while I was gone. And it just felt so good that I didn't have to worry about this podcast. I didn't have to worry about getting it on the air or doing anything. You guys just took over. And that was I just really appreciate that. And I just want you guys to know I enjoyed it. You guys are awesome.
Oh, well, thank you. We really, really missed you. And I have to give many kudos to the lady upstairs, Tina,
I was
who
like,
took
what?
over who
I
took
bet you
over
gonna pat her on the head. Like,
she did all of the tech stuff while Rhonda and I just watched in amazement as she worked like a little tornado, figuring out how to do all that stuff that you always take care of. And we have an appreciation for all that you've done. And so as much as we appreciate your compliments, we did miss you, and we're so glad that you're back.
Good to be back.
And yeah, okay. So oh, I didn't say my what's up. I am don't know what. Oh, I want to share that. Guess what? Somebody who I know started actually writing. And I think that a lot of the encouragement that we have provided are heretofore unreally heralded or recognized fan of ours is my husband, who, yes, he actually wrote about 500 words. And I'm sure he thinks they're the most terrible thing ever, but it's really good stuff. I'm really excited for him, and I hope that he will keep going. And he says that we are really an encouragement and an inspiration to him. So big shout out to hubby Stash, and good job for taking the first step, because that can be really hard to have that blank page and the cursor flashing at you.
Yes,
Is he sharing anything about his story?
I don't know if he would be happy with me sharing or not. So that's all I'm going to say, is that he actually broke the seal and did those first words. And it's funny because he knows NaNoWriMo is coming up, and neither of us have talked about whether or not he would make any kind of serious commitment, because when you're brand new and you're just starting something like this, you don't even know what kind of time you actually have. And so he's being a little bit skittish about saying, I'm going to write so many words in November or anything like that. But he has taken a first step. And so I just wanted to publicly praise him for that on the podcast.
Well, congratulations to him.
Awesome.
Awesome, Stash. We're proud of you.
All right. So I am going to delicately and gracefully move us into the next segment with a subtle segue that nobody would even notice. We are talking about...
Except for the fact that you just said that.
Using the word segue is kind of a giveaway.
We've been talking the basics of story. We're getting back to basics and talking about the elements of story. In the past couple of episodes, we've been talking about the beginning of your story, whether or not you should do a prologue. If you missed those episodes, you'll want to go back and listen to those. And if you are caught up with us, you are probably wondering, now we have our reader hooked. Now we have done an amazing job of getting them invested in our character and wanting to go along with them on this adventure that we've created. What do we do now that we've got the introduction finished? What are our next steps? Anyone?
Well, that is the age-old question, isn't it? Because seriously, how many times did I sit down and write a great opening to a story, and then it just kind of went and didn't go anywhere until the novel that I'm writing right now, and I had struggled with that middle part. It's a whole different thing. I always got A's in creative writing, and the teacher would write wonderful stuff on my pages. But that's writing a short story or a paper for a creative writing class, and having to sustain a story for 60 to 80,000 words is a completely different animal. And I struggled with it.
Well, once I've kind of processed what we're all talking about, it seems to me that when they talk about a story arc, it's because the shape of a story, if you drew out things that are happening in the book, it's supposed to look kind of like a mountain or a mound. So instead of being a straight line, if you picture a straight line going across a piece of graphing paper, instead it's supposed to be a big curve, like an upside down U. And so your introduction and everything happens before the you starts to come up. And so usually when people get a story idea, I will say it's typically the big moment of the story or the big reason why the story exists, which would be at the top of that you. That's the climax, the most important thing of the story. So you need to get there somehow. So all the stuff leading up to that point is called rising action, right?
Right.
Mhm.
And I think that the struggle that Tina has, I think it may also be something, I'm sure lots of other writers have that struggle, but do you think it also maybe be something that is like a pantser versus a plotter kind of a situation too? Because as Tina was talking, I don't know that I've struggled with that aspect, but because I already know what's coming next, because I plot things out. Would you think that when you, Tina, when you talked about like early on that you would struggle with that, it's probably because you were not plotting it, you were just writing, which is good. Some people, that's just how they do it, right? But
Yeah.
would you agree? So
Yeah, that was definitely it. And I had to experiment with several different types of plotting until I found one that worked for me. And so
Right.
that was where my struggle was.
Yeah.
So
And I
anyone
think
that's,
in a
go ahead.
short story too, you've got one thing really that the story is about, where in a novel, there's so many more instead
Mhm.
of just that one.
And we don't have time to like go into this in depth like we have in the past. And if you're watching this and you haven't been on our Facebook page and watched last year's Facebook Lives that we did during October, you should go back and watch them, because I think that they are gold. I think we did a lot of like prepping, and we kind of went step by step and all these things we're talking about. But
I think that's about episode 7 in our archives. I'm pretty sure.
yes, and then we also do the Facebook
Okay.
Lives. If you go back to Facebook, you can go to the videos or the live section. You'll see all those lives that we did too. So they won't be on here on YouTube. They'll be on Facebook. So we have other things there as well. So, okay. So you talked about like the character arc and like that. So did someone say the word pinch points? I thought I heard someone say that.
It's in the outline.
Okay, but I thought
We
I heard
haven't
someone.
talked about it yet.
All right. I don't call them pinch points, and you'll see this if you watch the videos. I call them disasters, only because that's just what I'd always been taught they were called. So for me, what happens after we've hooked them is that I have disasters, and I will have one at 25%, approximately. Like, I'm not killer. Some people are really killer about it. I'm not. About 25% of the book, one at 50% of the book, one at 75% of the book. And and I also have, if you sign up for our newsletter, you can get my romance plotting sheet that shows you kind of what I do at each point of that as for a romance novelist. But for the genres you guys write, would you say that you do that as well when you're writing? Do you have these pinch points or these things where the action changes or the story changes to move it forward?
Well, a lot of the plotting things that I looked at had the disasters, and then the pinch points were something different.
Oh, okay. Let's talk about that.
So the pinch points were something that pivoted your character that led to the next disaster.
Yeah.
And so we were talking beforehand about the percentages that I had put down in the outline.
Mhm.
That's because they're in between the disasters.
Gotcha.
And the first one a lot of times is like a mini victory. And then the second pinch point is the leading up to the point of no return.
Right.
All hope is lost point.
Right.
So if somebody comes to this process or comes to this podcast and they're thinking, oh no, I don't have any pinch points, I don't have any disasters, what would you suggest to them to do?
I think we're all going to have a different answer, and I think everyone knows what my answer is going to be.
Say it.
Plot. You need to plot it out. For me, I think that is the most, for me as a writer and people that are wired the way I am, plotting out your story before you even sit down to start. Or if you are writing it and having struggles, then stopping and plotting it out is the most important thing you can do. When I have a story idea, it sometimes comes to me like through a character. Like I have an idea of a character and I want to write about that character. Sometimes it's something that happens, like the my Widows of the West that I'm going to be working on for Nano. I'm supposed to be working on for Nano. I had one scene in my head, and it's actually the hook, and it comes at the very beginning, and it is the character at her husband's wake, and she's happy about it. So like, wow, why would she be happy? So that's what started me. So I started thinking about the what ifs. That's something I got from KM Weiland, who is great. If you don't follow her on Twitter, you should. KM Weiland has this what ifs theory. So if you just sit down and say, what if this happened? What if that happened? And be as crazy as you can. Then I take all the good ones out of that and I plot them in the story. That's how I do it.
Yeah. And when you talk about that, you're probably talking about either writing it down freehand or typing it.
Yeah.
But my favorite is to go on a road trip with somebody and just talk about it. And that's when you know you have a really good friend, because they will go with you into this imaginary world that doesn't even exist yet and will care about it as much as you do, enough to throw back at you. Well, what about this question? And what about that question? Because when somebody asks you, well, why would your character do that? You then have to think about, well, because of their past and their parents were this kind of a way. And suddenly you might have more things to think about than you know would ever fit in a novel. So you get the opposite problem. Instead of now having nothing to write as rising action, you have to decide what's important to include in your story. And that's a much happier place to be, in my opinion.
Right. The advice that I heard when I was stuck was, I can't remember where I heard it now. I've heard a lot of people say it, but you chase your character up a tree and then you start throwing acorns at him, and then you eventually cut the limb off that he's standing on. You know, you just keep making it tougher and tougher for him. But the problem I have is exactly what Maria just mentioned in our chat. So
the chat's been really busy. I'm so excited. I figured out how to look at it.
Yeah. Okay. So she says, I'm a plotter and usually know where it's going, but my issue can be filling the plot with enough interesting stuff between the plot points. That is me right there. Because I can think of all sorts of horrible things to do. But
rather than starting 30-page breaks saying the next day, filling a plot with enough interesting stuff between plot points. And I think that's a struggle, because for me, I feel like I think this is interesting. Will my readers think it's interesting? Like, and then everybody wants to say, well, if it's moving the story forward, and you're like, no, because I'm trying to like fill in between the parts that move the story forward. So what advice do we have for Maria and for Rhonda, so that you're not just doing 30 chapters that start the next day, like she's saying?
Well, when I what am I trying to say? I experimented with several different ways of plotting. And some of them worked for me and some didn't. But I really like the Story Genius method. Lisa Crone, I think is her name, wrote a book called The Story Genius. And it's just a basic piece of paper, and you write, like, you have two sections. What is happening and what is the effect of that? And then down below is like the character's internal reasoning. So why? Why is it important to your story? And what is the consequence for your character? And so it kind of is like a 2-tier outline, where you're outlining the plot points, but you're also outlining the internal conflict, reasoning, all that. And I just like paraphrased an entire incredible book down into 2 sentences. So it's a lot more complicated than that. But for me, that really helps me when I'm stuck. I look at the scene I just wrote and I say, okay, look at my 2-tier outline. What was going on and what was the consequence? What was the reason it was important? And what about, what is it? And then you ask your question, so what now? Or so what? And then that leads you into the next part. And that really helps me. So I'm kind of like in between. I'm like a plotzer or a planter or something like that, because I need to be able to plan out my story, but I can't have every point already figured out, because I need more room to be creative, I guess. And so I guess my advice is you have to find what works for you.
Agree.
Because like we're 4 different writers and we use 4 different methods.
Right.
And I would also say that I was really liberated just by reading a whole lot more of people who just did a whole lot of the next day, but they didn't say the next day. They just moved on. So, we're going to have to run down to the church tomorrow and find out blah, blah, blah. Chapter 3, the church sat on a hill, blah, blah. So you just go ahead and move on, and you don't have to like be so in your head about it all the time. Sometimes it's okay to just like fast forward in time, jump in time, do whatever, and it actually works. So so you can kind of relax a little bit about trying to make all of that go away, I feel like.
Agreed. For me, because I am way more structured, I think, than probably anyone in this group. And that's just because like Tina said, we're all different. And so this is what works for me. It may not work for everybody, but I always know that my books are going to be about 32 chapters. Now, when you read them, except for novellas, when you read them, they might have 35 or they might have 30, but like I plan for 32. And then I take my what ifs and what I know are going to be the main disasters, and I put those in at chapter 8, at chapter 16, and, where they're supposed to be. And then I take the pinch points, the things that I know, like the hook and like that, and I put those in. So then I look at it and I see where the blanks are. Well, if I'm here at the hook, what do I have to have accomplished in order for this disaster to work out for me? So then I see how many chapters I have, and then I figure out, well, what am I going to have to put in here, here, and here? And I have 2 points of view. I have his point of view and her point of view. So that helps me to fill up those spaces, but that works for me. Not everyone is going to work that way. And I know that. So, so again, it really depends on your personality. But ultimately, I think you just have to have some sort of plan.
Okay. So, let me take a look at our handy dandy little outline here. What happens? Okay, so you do all of your rising action and then you get to the top of the story, the peak of the action, the climactic moment, right? And a lot of times that's not difficult. If you're writing in order, you have built tension to where some big explosive moment has to happen. If you are coming at this new, it's possibly the first scene you're able to write because that's a very gripping and it's in your head and you write that scene. So then that you've gotten to the climactic part of your story, then what happens? We're at the top of that upside down U. Anyone?
Well, you have to have the conclusion. So you have your climax, but the climax is going to have some kind of outcome, or it's going to have a consequence. It's going to reveal a secret, or it's going to change your character's life in some way. So you need to have that following action after the climax to wrap up the story.
Okay, so you have rising action that takes you all the way up to the very tippy top of the roller coaster, if we're picturing it like that, and then the roller coaster reaches the very peak and starts falling. Now here is all of the outcome of that whole story that you've written. The dust is settling now, and we're tying up all the loose ends.
And so
you
if you
can't just
want
have your big climactic moment, then say the end, right?
Right. If you want a really concrete example, for example, the book that I'm working on, the climax is, well, the New Testament is missing, and she goes on this big adventure to go find it, and then she finds it. So that's the climax. She finds what she was searching for through the entire story. But now she's got to take it back home. And so I'm kind of doing a hero's journey kind of thing, where in the hero's journey story structure, they leave their normal, regular world, go into the special world, accomplish their goal, and then go back to their regular world. And so that whole part where she goes back to the regular world is that falling action after this climax.
But her regular world is improved.
Or
right.
changed.
Well, it's changed somehow by the fact that, he threw the ring into the lava, or he killed the dragon, or whatever it is.
So, I mean, I think you're making a really good point about your genre for this particular book and how important it can be to read in your genre, because then some of this will be very apparent to you. I've been reading a lot of cozy mystery type stories, and just from reading them, you kind of figure out how they're supposed to be laid out. And it's so interesting too. The current series that I'm reading always seems to have 40 chapters, and you can always kind of know, well, they're on the track of whatever, but you know that that's not the real killer because they're only at chapter 26. And so the real stuff is going to not happen until chapter like 37 or something like that. So anyway, it's very important that if you are not currently reading the genre that you're trying to write, it could be very helpful to you to pick up a book in the genre that you're trying to write and see if you can't figure out how they are structured. especially traditionally published mass market, kind of thing. They're going to have a structure that they follow, especially from writer to writer. If there's a writer you like, see if you can see how their books are put together, and that would give you a nice framework for you to structure your own book.
Yeah.
We have a
Speaking of
couple
structure,
oh,
Barbie in the chat
there was just
said she's a modified Jen planner. Okay, well, as a victim of as a witness to her planning, I would like to say that's not completely true. If any of you have seen The Big Bang Theory, okay, picture Sheldon at his whiteboard, and that's actually more accurate.
That's the modified part, right, Barb?
I also have to point out another comment we have. Maria just has to point out that an upside down U is an N.
So what you were saying about genre makes a total sense too, because what Tina was saying about what happens at her like third disaster, like what where she's at, she's found the Bible and then it comes down from there. With romance, it's a little different. And romance at that point is when you feel like there's no way they're going to get back together. This is the point when you think it's over, it's never going to happen, and you want to strangle the author at that point. And then that's when you have to start bringing things together. So for me, the last part of the book is actually the hardest, because I get to that point and I'm like, okay, I feel like I just want to like end it. Like I want not end it, but I want to like get them back together and be done. But then as I'm piecing the story together is when I remember that when I write a story, it's not just about the romance. Each of my characters has an arc, as well as the romance happening. So then I have to remember that I have to fix and bring together how my female character has grown in the book and have to bring that together to fruition. And I have to I've got to fix the arc of the male character. And that all happens in those chapters that are in between them. We're never going to be together. And all of a sudden they're together, which could only be an hour, honestly. But I have to put all those final details in together. So, but this is the part of the story that I struggle with the most, to be honest.
Getting them, solving the big mess that you've made, you're saying?
No, I can solve it, but like to make that not feel like it's this much of the book where the rest of the book is this big, like making it feel satisfying, like being a satisfying read lengthwise. Yeah.
Yeah, so because there's nothing more frustrating than when an author totally drops a plot point. Like they mention a cheese knife went missing or something, and it seems like it's a really big deal in the beginning of the book. And then, it's never really mentioned again. You never find out what happened to the cheese knife. And, it's not a good thing.
I was watching a Hallmark Channel movie yesterday, and it was actually a decent one. And
no such thing. No, just kidding.
At the very end, I was like, okay, great story. However, he lives in this country and she lives in this country, and state. One's in New York City and one's in Iowa or Idaho, something, as a farmer. So they decided that they do love each other and they're going to stay married. Okay, great. Where are they going to live? How are they going to settle this? He's like an exec at this big company and she owns a farm and runs the whole thing. Like, how is this going to happen? They never settled that. And that bothered me.
Jennifer, you really should give a spoiler alert if you're going to tell us that the Hallmark movie ended with them getting together. You should really say spoiler alert before you reveal something like that.
Spoiler alert, every romance novel, they get together. Sorry, hate me if you want.
People still love to read them even though they know what the ending is. It's so surprising to me. People love it, but they really it's really satisfying to get a nice happily ever after ending in a romance. I get it. I do.
Yeah, so I just have to say that everything that Jen just said just reinforces what you said about you need to know your genre.
Yes.
And you need to know how your genre works, because if I try to write a hero's journey like a romance, I would have a mess on my hands.
Yeah, and I think
Jen tried to write a romance like hero's journey, it wouldn't be a romance.
And I think that's why it's important for people to cut through the nonsense. I mean, there's romantic elements in some of my stories, but I know I'm not writing a romance. And you have to just kind of say, if you can't figure out what genre you are closest to. Like, you're not writing mystery, you're not writing a romance, so figure it out, right? Even if there's elements of mystery, if your book doesn't walk and talk like that genre, it's not going to be fit together, right? Exactly. All right. So do we need to talk anything? Oh, go ahead, Rhonda. Are you going to say something?
I was just going to say I can't wait for Accountability Corner.
Okay.
Wow, that's a first.
Yes.
You like this is the woman that goes running away from accountability. Goes, oh, look at the time.
Oh my
My
god.
plane's leaving.
Well, we really didn't talk about epilogues and whether we should do them or not.
Yes.
I don't know if we
maybe.
have time for that, but
Do we want to maybe talk about it next time, the conclusion and all that stuff? That's probably maybe enough for another podcast, I would say.
probably.
Yeah. All right. And so we'll talk about how do you wrap everything up, just like we had a segment on how do you kick everything off. And hopefully if you're following along with this has really helped you to kind of get motivated to start a project. And in just a few days, National Novel Writing Month is starting. You've heard us talk about it as NaNoWriMo. Do we want to talk about it for just a minute? Because the next time we get together, we will be in November, which is annually National Novel Writing Month. It will actually be November 1st.
Oh my gosh. Seriously? You're
Yeah,
lying, right?
Like, do we want to talk about it or not? I mean, I think we have some time.
Give me a crying moment.
Well, National
Alright, I'm back.
Novel Writing Month, which we condensed down to NaNoWriMo,
Or
Yes.
Nano.
is the month of November, and the challenge is to write 50,000 words within the month of November.
Yes, it's
And
about
there's a website and there's a whole thing. You can go look it up.
it's not 1,800 words a day. It's between 16 and 1,800 words. Someone
I
else.
think it's 1676 or something like that.
Yeah, every day. If you did them every day, you would have to write about 1,600 words a day. If you wait and get behind 4 days, then you have to write 10,000 words in a weekend or whatever. But the goal is 50,000 words, which is a short, very short novel, by the way. But then you can say, I wrote a novel, unlike most people who say they want to write a novel and never get around to it. That is the purpose. So you can say, I did it. Jen, you're freaking out. You are a big advocate of NaNoWriMo. And of course, you were the only one committed to doing NaNoWriMo before your world sort of crumbled. So how are you feeling about that? We totally understand if you're like, not this year.
Yeah, I don't know if I should wait for my for accountability corner, but yeah, so coming into this, I was honestly blindsided. I looked at the calendar and went, what? Like in a week?
I can't believe
have
it's
to
the end of
start?
October. I know.
I know. I mean, like
The
my
leaves.
kids,
Hello.
my kids are on intercession now. I've talked about before. We are in a balanced calendar, so my kids get breaks throughout the year, but then they have a shorter summer vacation. So we just started intercession, and earlier this week, my girls came to me and said, "Mom, my Halloween party's on Thursday, and we haven't gotten costumes." And I was like, "Halloween? Is it even October?" Like I was. So I rushed around. We got that. So now I don't have to worry about Halloween because we're all set for Halloween. However, NaNoWriMo. So my first indication was no, there's just no way. But the more I'm sitting here talking with you all and I'm thinking about this story that is just burning inside of me, and I think that if I don't at least try, I'm going to regret it. If I don't try, I will regret it. But if I try and I fail, then at least I can say that I tried. And there have been nanos that I have completely failed because I just shared earlier in the podcast how my life tends to always fall apart in November. But last year, even though it was a tough year for me, I finished a book. I mean, I think I had 2 or 3 chapters left and I finished it in December, but I wrote book 4 for my series. Book 3's not done, but book 4 is like ready for an editor. So I think that I owe it to myself and my career and my family to at least give it a try. So guess what I'm going to be pulling out today? Wish I had it right here.
Privacy
I'm
thing,
pulling
isolation booth.
the isolation booth. So the isolation booth. All right, I'm going to save the rest of that for my accountability.
Okay. What about you, Bambina? Did you decide you are going to only edit in November? Is that what you've decided?
Right. And some of my editing requires some writing. So I might, I'm going to figure out how I'm going to count my words, whether it's going to be words edited or whatever.
All right. And
we'll
wait for, I was going to push you about goals and stuff, but we'll wait for accountability corner. How about you, Rhonda? What are you thinking about NaNoWriMo? Yes, you are?
Yes.
Well, how's that for a concise answer? Yes.
And it gives you a little bit of stability too. Everything's are so changing and chaotic right now. At least you know exactly what you're getting with Nano.
Very
Yeah.
true. Gosh, that's a true statement right there.
And we need to remember for our outtakes for our next anniversary special, Jennifer's little motivational speech that she just did there. If I try, at least I will. I mean, it was great. I was sitting here being like, yes, we should all at least give it a try. And it was really awesome. So great. Yeah. And so based on that speech alone, I also am doing nano. No, just kidding.
I get it.
I had decided that I'm going to work on a project that also is really, really on my heart and got really super excited about it, to the point where I opened a Scrivener document and started like putting down what I think is going to happen in the story. So I'm actually really motivated to do National Novel Writing Month. So check in with us on social media and next week on the podcast and see if we regret our decision that we're making today. Okay, so now it's time for the feeding of the backs. This is where we read for each other a 15-minute and 30-second word sprint that we did before the show started. I asked for a 30-minute or a 30-second extension today.
I want a 30-minute extension.
Because I just wanted to add one last little sentence. But normally we take only 15 minutes to write a story. And Tina, why don't you tell everybody what our words were and then share your 15-minute word sprint with us? And just a reminder, we only give positive feedbacks about these. Feedbacks is. Anyway, we only give 15 positive feedback because we didn't edit these. We just wrote them and now we're sharing.
Okay, before I do that, I just want to say Barb is even committing.
And Maria.
Yay!
So
Maria
that's
is
exciting.
also.
Maria is as well. I see that on there.
Yay!
She also said, plus with Nano, even if you write 1,000 words in the whole month, you've still won for getting some of the story down. Yes.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yes.
Can't edit a blank page, right? That's what Jen likes
Right.
to say.
Okay, so the words were dorm, mosquito, coin, route, and pyramid. I think I might have gotten 2 of them. So here we go. Angelica swatted the mosquito on her arm, his body cavity already full of her blood. She wiped away the splotch it made and continued to make her way down the river. As she used her paddle to guide the canoe around a bend, she saw their destination ahead. The place where the river emptied into Big Bear Bay was lined with wooden walkways and faded gray buildings. And in the bay there were ships moored, their sails down and empty lines flapping in the wind. The men in the canoe ahead of her aimed toward the eastern edge of the river, and one of them jumped out onto the walkway, quickly tying their canoe to a post. Angelica aimed her canoe just behind them and threw the line to the man for him to tie her off before carefully climbing out onto the walkway. Old man Christopher and Mary pulled in behind her. Angelica had never seen anything like it. She had heard of trading posts before, but this is not how she imagined one looking. Men hurried down the walkways with parcels on their shoulders or slung on their backs. There were women on platforms cleaning fish, and the children seemed to have the task of shooing away the eagles who landed nearby, inching toward the platforms to steal a snack. The smell of fish and fry bread filled the air, and all of the activities seemed to be moving in the direction of the bay. Once her pack was securely on her back, she followed Christopher's men through the maze of wooden walkways until they spilled out onto a big square that bordered the shoreline of the bay. Docks jutted out into the water with various ships tied to them. One of the ships would be her transportation to Anchorage, a route they followed several times a month to trade with other posts up and down the inlet. One such ship was just pulling out of the bay, its sails unfurled, white against the blue sky. Soon Angelica would be on one of those ships herself. She took a deep breath to settle the jitters in her stomach at the thought of being out on such big water. She couldn't help but think about how Petra would love this.
Oh, why did you have to say that last sentence?
Yeah.
Oh, twist that knife in my heart.
Aw.
Oh,
Love
she's
it.
so sad. That was so vibrant to me. I totally could see the whole
Yes.
thing.
I could hear the docks. Yep.
Mhm.
And also, I'm
Mhm.
really sad that the mosquitoes did survive the apocalypse.
Well, you know,
I know you
EMPs
couldn't.
don't affect mosquitoes.
I know you couldn't see this, Tina, but when you read that very first line with the mosquito, all 3 of us went.
Oh yeah.
Like it was so vivid, it was so good that we all were like, ugh. But and Maria says the description of the mosquito dying full of her blood was really well written, yes, but
Yeah.
also really gross. Yeah. It was perfect. Well, that's
Well, I
exactly
have
how
to
we
say
felt.
that I have lived that moment
Yes.
over and over and over and over again
I think
Yeah.
for my entire childhood.
I think we
Yeah.
all have, and I think all of
Yeah.
us went to that moment when you talked about it, because that's
Mhm.
why we all made the face, because we were like, you ever smash one and then there's the blood there? Like, so
Ugh.
you totally put us, all of us, and that's such an excellent example of art,
Yeah.
human experience. Really, really good work.
Yep.
And
Thank
Maria,
you.
I think she did say eagles, or at least that's what I heard too, because I was picturing them carrying the kids off instead of the kids picking them off.
No, I did say eagles.
Okay.
And like if you go to Homer Spit in Alaska,
Uh-huh.
it's basically Homer Spit. It's just a spit of land, and its main purpose is for the fishing charters. When you go fishing for halibut, or if you go deep sea fishing for the salmon out there, that's where the ships come. They're like yacht-sized boats. Come back, and then they have these tables on these platforms on the docks where you can clean your fish. And if you go on YouTube, you can find videos of them fighting with the eagles over their catch, because the eagles will come up and steal them right out of their hands.
Yeah, I
Wow.
think I've seen that.
Well,
So,
just
yeah,
wonderful, and just the right amount of description for me. I totally was there and didn't feel bogged down with the description. It was great.
thank you.
Yeah, perfect.
All right. Okay, Jennifer.
Oh, I'm next.
Yeah,
All right.
you're next.
Well, just remember we only had 15 minutes.
oh, yeah.
This is coming from somebody who hasn't written in 3 weeks. Not a thing. So,
Okay, stop with the excuses.
I know.
do
Here
we
we
need
go.
to use that for an excuse?
Just read it.
The professor's voice buzzed somewhere in the distance of my consciousness, like an obnoxious mosquito in the middle of the night, occasionally swooping in near my ear, then retreating off into the darkness for a time, then buzzing back invisibly. Annoying, really. I didn't want to be here with the 98 other college freshmen sitting in the dark amphitheater watching slides of public speakers from the 1950s. I wanted to be back in my dorm, curtains closed, trying to catch up on all the hours of sleep I'd lost out on this past weekend. I opened my eyes and tried to focus on what the guest professor was saying about some unknown civil rights leader that had supposedly made a monumentous speech in this very same theater. If her speech had been so great, why haven't I heard of her before now? I blinked several times, willing myself to not shut my eyes, but it really did feel like a useless fight. Honestly, if these profs really wanted us to stay awake for their mantras, shouldn't they keep the lights on? A quick scan of the room proved that I wasn't the only one struggling. Every single person was either nodding off or full on snoring at this point, except for one. I'd never noticed him before, which really wasn't surprising since I never stayed awake in this class long enough to look at any of my classmates. But this one, I should have noticed him before. Even in the dark, illuminated only by the green glow of the oversized projector screen, his wavy dark hair and strong profile were something I normally wouldn't have missed. Although awake, he didn't seem any more interested in the day's topic than the rest of us. He was focused on the coin in his hand that he kept flipping over and over again. Toss, catch, slap on the back of his hand, look at it, start all over again. I wondered what he was hedging his bets on. The lights flicked on, causing the room full of nappers to stretch and come alive again. It also caused the good-looking coin flipper to turn his head and look directly at me. I had no idea how long I'd been staring, but I knew in an instant what shade my face had become. I quickly grabbed my notebook and stuffed it in my backpack, hoping to make a quick exit without having to face 3, 2, 1.
I can't believe that you were not too embarrassed to even show that the light. Are you kidding me? Like, that was so good.
Was
and
it?
you're setting us up for it to really stink on ice. And it was like great. Like, it needed zero editing. I mean, it was so good. Yes.
Thanks. I needed that.
I'm not just saying that either. I mean, it was, although I was having fun thoughts about the green glow, like, oh, maybe he's an alien, but I knew that wasn't going. But it was so funny because the minute when she's like, well, except for one person, like, it's a dude. It's a dude.
I know. Like, I just cannot write. I cannot not write a romance, right? Like, it's just like.
We knew
But you're
it was
so
coming.
good at it. Yeah. I mean, why change tricks when you're doing a really good job? That's awesome.
I would argue the editing because you haven't looked at it. And I'm pretty sure I flip back and forth between past and present tense. I'm pretty sure I tried really hard to stay past tense, and it's first person again. What in the world, Rhonda? I think you're contagious or something. But every time I sprint now, it's like it's first person, so we'll see.
It was just really good because you set it up with such good details about, what kind of a class it was and why she was tired and everything without going and belaboring a lot of the points. So it just was really well done, Jen. I thought it was great.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
That's not a part of any story yet, right?
No, it's not. I mean, there was more that I wanted to do. Like I in my mind, I could see the word pyramid being used for like when you're trying, all these 98 kids are trying to get out of one door. So like, I kind of had that image in my mind to use the word pyramid, and that didn't happen. And then, what was the other word that I didn't use? I had him. So anyways, I wanted to get to the point where that he was flipping the coin, but whether or not to talk to her or not.
Route.
Yeah, route. Thought we weren't allowed to say route. What was it you said that was like?
I said route unless you're a heathen, and then you call it root. Because I said the root is the thing at the bottom of your tooth. Of course, all of it was just fun.
Yes.
But Jennifer, I had something to say. Oh, this could be the beginning of like your baseball story, maybe. Like if she didn't already know the people. Anyway, it's just something to think about.
Maybe, because if you remember one of the baseball stories, it's supposed to be that they knew each other in college. And that, remember, I wrote in one of our sprints, she comes out and her dad is watching the game and she's upset because the baseball, her favorite sport, is forever ruined because that guy got signed to her team, this guy from college. And so that's so it could be because
Yeah. And the whole thing about she wondered what he was hedging his bets on, like that would take forever for somebody to think of something that clever to say at the end of the coin flipping. I just can't even believe you thought that was bad. Okay, I'm done.
Thanks.
The only thing I have to say is it was so good I can't stop coughing.
Well, I'm glad you've already had
phlegm.
Rhonda, I'm gonna go just to keep it from being me talking too much in a row. Okay. I think I just kind of waved at the prompts, but I think a couple of them made it in there. I'm not sure. I am completely uninspired. Miranda dropped her book bag and did the Nestea Plunge onto our bed, throwing an arm dramatically across her face. I rolled my eyes. Who needs inspiration? It's a book report. That's just the problem, she said, sitting up to watch me as I started to unpack my backpack. How can one encapsulate the true experience of reading The Count of Monte Cristo in mere words? I frowned. Easy. You start with an introduction, bullet point the main plot points, and wrap it up with a conclusion. Sure, that is all well and good for an ordinary book, but not for this one. She bent to fish the giant tome from her bag and held it in the air like a long-lost and recently discovered talisman. I can't believe how much you liked it. It was all I could do to get through it. You keep saying that, and I can't believe you actually got all the way through it and are not absolutely in love with it. How far have you gotten since the last time? He's still digging the tunnel, Miranda said, frowning. Ah, the prison scenes, I sighed. The most boring part of the story, to be sure. But since I already know what happens, thanks to you, I feel more motivated than ever to finish. It will be the longest book I have ever read on my own. I felt my face grow warm with a guilty blush. Miranda had approached me for help with the assignment when I was in a particularly irritable mood, and tired of always being the person to bail her out of her dilemmas, I'd given her a slightly modified retelling of The Count of Monte Cristo. Now I wondered how much of my fabrication was the impetus for her devotion to the tale, and what of it would make it into her assignment. Look, why don't you just read my paper and take a few hints from it? No. I want to do something big, something that really makes a statement about this amazing work of literature. I know. Her fingers gave a snap of inspiration. I'll make a papier-mâché pyramid. Miranda, I wouldn't. And I'll make some little clay figures, a camel, a man with a shovel digging for treasure, and maybe even a pirate ship somewhere off in the ocean. I'll need a big piece of cardboard painted blue for that. Having seen more than one of Miranda's Pinterest fails, I breathed a sigh of relief. Surely any pyramid she tried to create would look misshapen and lumpy. And if I could convince her to make the entire thing a more accurate mud color rather than the gold I was sure she was already envisioning, perhaps the teacher would appreciate her rather artistic rendering of the Isle of Monte Cristo and pass her. I can even use this as a little treasure chest, she said, holding up an old velour ring box. Maybe you could help me make some tiny gold coins to put in it. Sure, I said, wondering how long Miranda's enthusiasm would last and how much of this project would fall on me to complete. I smiled as I considered this and wondered why I ever worried in the first place. Of course, with me at the helm, Miranda's Island of Monte Cristo display would be spot on accurate and likely award-winning. I'd be happy to help, I said. The end.
Ah,
So good. How many words is that?
I do not know.
2,000.
Yeah.
No. 584.
That's amazing.
you had me hooked at Nestea Plunge. Okay.
Yes.
I'm telling you what, those references between Nestea Plunge and Pinterest fails, that is my life. I totally would read this entire book, even if it wasn't written by you.
Anybody who doesn't know the Nestea Plunge needs to just look it up. Nestea. It's instant tea, and there's like a whole commercial with the Nestea Plunge, and that's what that. Yeah.
Maria, they may not have that across the pond.
And I feel like that this whole morning, even like what the people watching right now and we'll watch later didn't get to be part of the precast before we went live.
Mm-hmm.
Everything has been very much like our like growing up, like the media and the commercials and stuff. It's so funny that as soon as you said Nestea Plunge, I was like, yes, like I just completely related with this character. Yeah.
I just have to share Maria's. Am I still muted? No. Okay. Maria's little comment. She's a heathen because
you say potato, I say potato.
It's probably more accurate to say that we're the heathens and she's not, because I think the English started over there and then.
She's asking what instant tea is. I'm afraid that's blasphemy to her.
Yeah,
probably.
do not. Yeah, you do not want it. You go. Yeah, convenient. So therefore, American.
The commercials were great.
It's just this brown powder you put in the water and stir up. You have tea.
Yeah, for some reason.
Iced tea.
Yeah, for some reason we think it's just too much trouble to do it the old-fashioned way, even though it really doesn't take that much longer. But anyway, yeah, it's an instant tea.
Yeah.
The only time we ever used it was when we made Russian tea, which was Tang.
Which was when you were in a rush.
No, the cans of Tang you used to get?
Yeah, Frank Fargo drank Tang.
An instant tea and some nutmeg. And that's what we would have when we came in from playing in the snow. A hot couple.
Okay,
it's really good.
And you add like a tablespoon of powdered milk to it. It was so delicious.
And it was delicious. We didn't have powdered milk.
Jennifer's face.
They loved it until they knew what was in it.
Oh. Kids are boogers that way, aren't they?
They are.
The kids come running in to like eat whatever I'm making. I'm like, get out of here. Cause I'm like I've cooked vegetables in it and I'm like pulling out like the big pieces because I want to eat the vegetable, but I had put it in there to like, anyway, I'm like, get out of here. Cause I'm pulling the vegetables out. Don't want them to see. Cause then they'll be like, it tastes funny, Mom. Why does it taste funny?
Maria says that sounds hideously wrong.
It is.
She's right.
It is. But we do tea differently. Like you would not like. I have a friend who was visiting. Wasn't visiting me, but she had visited here, and she went to like what we call diners. We call them Coney Islands here in Michigan, but ordered hot tea, and it came with lemon. And then she was like, "What is this? Who puts lemon in their tea?" And then you guys, or I don't know if everyone does, but cream and sugar in tea is like I like my tea black, even if it's cold or hot. I don't care. I like it black. I don't like anything in it.
No.
But I like my coffee. I like my coffee all sugared up and creamy, and my British friends are like, "What? No, black." And I'm like, ugh. So it's a cultural thing.
We can't even get into sweet tea. That's just a whole nother animal.
Sweet. When we say tea in the United States, we mean iced tea, cold tea. Generally.
Usually, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes. If we mean tea, like we mean hot tea.
All of the hot tea went into the harbor. Like, I'm just kidding.
Nothing like
cream goes on a scone, milk goes in tea. Maria said, I'm so like feeling like someday there needs to be some kind of a meetup, like not anytime soon because times are kind of tight at the Hirschberger's house right now, but we need to all be pinching our pennies and trying to figure out how we can learn from each other and have some fun experiences discussing these differences face to face. Yeah. Unfortunately, our time is running out. Rhonda, we need to hear your part, and then we have to do accountability corner. So no more fun tea talk. Sorry, everyone.
Okay. Well, I got to say my part because Maria, when I went to the Scotland History Museum and went to their little thing, I had the cream on scones and my milk and tea, and you're right, it was amazing.
Yummy.
So I'll get on to my story. All right. So I did try to get all the words, except I think I forgot route. Route. I don't even know how to say it anymore. I'm so confused. Okay. Each sentence is basically a vehicle for the word. All right.
Okay.
The boys' dorm, I squeaked, hoping this was a joke. The last place I wanted to be poking my nose around was the freshman dorm. When Jake started flipping his coin, I knew he didn't want to go in there either. I'm afraid so, Miss Fatale, the dean said. A warning for you. One of the students' science projects has gotten out of control, so there's a bit of a mosquito issue. It's mostly contained to the second floor. So if you take the elevator, they shouldn't bother you. No, the elevator's broken, Miss James stage whispered from her corner of the office, cowering slightly and shifting her eyes between me, Jake, and Mrs. Fatale. Mrs. Fatale whipped her head toward the sound of the voice in the corner, quieting it instantly. She wiped her brow with the perfect square of handkerchief she pulled from her bosom and sighed. Just take the stairs. If you don't dawdle, they probably won't find you. Jake and I glanced at each other, hoping the other would say something to get us out of this mess. It became apparent quickly that neither of us could come up with an excuse, so he reached out his hand, shook Mrs. Fatale's, and thanked her for the information. We were almost down the hallway when we heard the patter of Miss James' tiny feet following us. Wait, take this, you'll need it. I took the paper, thanked her, and held it so Jake could see it too. It was a map of the campus. It's in the shape of a pyramid, he said. You'd never know that from ground level. Think it's a coincidence? I don't know. Do you, Miss J? I didn't finish the sentence because she was gone from the hallway. There was no trace she was ever there. The end.
Oh, Rhonda, I love all these people. I want this to be a real book. I want them to be like crime-solving, sophomores or whatever. Like, how fun.
Well, good.
I really, really need to know what kind of experiment caused there to be a mosquito outbreak.
I've been thinking about that through this whole podcast. I'm
trying to cure malaria or something.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And I love the whole idea of these two. And then the girl who's so like, I don't want to go into the boys' dorm. You wonder, is she thinking it's dirty? Is she just kind of prudish and is like, whatever. Fun.
Well, thanks.
And Mrs. James has tiny little feet, like these little details. I just totally know these people. And a perfect square of handkerchief from her bosom.
That was really funny.
Yeah, a woman who stage whispers. That's great. That was a really good job.
You were always so good at those little details that I think if anyone else were to write them, it would feel like just superfluous, right? But you have a way of putting it in there to where it just makes your story so rich that you just feel like you just know these characters instantly and you're instantly engaged in them. And just such a good talent. Love it.
Completely agree.
You notice we both had a coin flipping guy?
Yes.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, I was like, wow, Jennifer and Rhonda just continued each other's story just for the timeline.
That's right.
Okay, so I just have to say it's we're going a little bit long. If you please would bear with us and stick around, we do need to make some accountability goals and talk about where we're at. Rhonda just couldn't wait for Accountability Corner. So should we have Rhonda go first, or do you want to go last, Rhonda? Like, do you have some kind of reason that you would want to go last or something?
No, I'll just go get it out of the way. Okay, so I've spent my week down here in sunny Florida thinking about my nano project. So since this is Preptober, I'm not thinking about any other projects besides my nano project. And this is my outline right here.
Wow.
You want to read it? No, you can't.
Wow.
So, I am so excited for this. And to answer Maria's question from a long time ago, basically, Maria, a romance has to have a happy ending. So there can be adventure, there can be whatever else in it you want, just as long as there's a happy ending, if you want it to be a romance. So this, Tina mentioned earlier too, that you can either have a romance or you can have a hero's journey. And I know that was just a generalization, but I am going to make it work.
Well,
hero's
good
journey,
for you.
romance. There you go.
Wow, you are set up for success. That is quite impressive.
I'm very excited.
Wow.
I'm excited too. That's awesome.
Awesome. That's so great.
So by next week, so on the 1st, what are you going to have? What is your
Friday the 1st? If Friday the 1st, I will have well,
first of all, are you like writing at midnight? What are you doing? Are you planning to stay up
writing at midnight?
I would
if
like
we're
to
doing that, then yes. I'll do it if you guys are.
Do you all want to log in and write at midnight?
Sure. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
All right. So for those of you that don't know, I don't know if you guys mentioned this. I don't remember you mentioning it, but last year at midnight, we started before, actually. We went live before, we chatted a bit, and then at midnight we just wrote live on YouTube. And so it was
I think
fun
it was
because
Facebook, Willow, though, wasn't it?
nope,
think
it
we
was
were on.
YouTube.
Oh, was it?
Yep.
Okay.
So then can we sleep in on Friday, or do you have to stay up all the way until 10 a.m. to then do the podcast is going to be just crazy on Friday. We'll talk. We'll talk after.
We'll figure that
But the
out.
point is, I do want to do the midnight writing no matter what. Awesome, Rhonda. Well, good for you. So I'm sorry, I totally interrupted. So by the first, you're going to have what when we come to the podcast for accountability?
Well, if we're planning on writing at midnight, then I'm going to see if I can get my 1667 for the day.
Okay.
By Friday morning.
Amazing. Really, really good job, Rhonda.
Yep. And Maria, we're in Eastern time zone. So we're minus 5 hours.
Yeah, like right now it's 11:05 where we are, if that helps you.
Right.
Okay,
so that means that she would be getting up at 5 a.m., which is a lot easier for me than staying up. Yeah. But if you want to see the hilarity of what Jen is like in the middle of the night.
Okay, I will go next again just to kind of break up how much of my yakadacking is happening. I'm so happy with my progress. I have gotten through book 1 of my Moxie Callahan, Frank Fargo series, and I am about 7 chapters finished, even though I have taken some of the chapters and dumped them into. So it was 7 chapters before I moved everything around. And I'm so glad that I am getting some traction. Rhonda has been very helpful, just kind of reading to tell me, you don't have to scrap this project. I was like, Rhonda, do you like what I wrote? And she said yes. And I'm like, I'm glad you said yes, because if you didn't, this was going right into the recycling bin, never to be seen again. Because I'm like, it either has to work and be finished, or I need to move on from this whole thing. And so fortunately, we're in a trajectory of where she's like, yes, it works. Hooray. So we're shifting gears into NaNoWriMo, but I want to continue editing between now and then. So I'm hoping to have at least another 2 chapters. I will make it a goal to have at least another 2 chapters finished editing before we do our free write at midnight on Friday. And I will then also do 16, whatever it is, for the new work. Great. So what about you, Tina? What's your accountability like today?
Okay, well, I just wanted to, I'm going to lift this up. I don't know if you can see it really well.
Yes.
This is my binder with my manuscript.
Yes.
And do you see all these little tabs?
Yes.
So these 3 orange ones, let me see if I can get it this way, that are right here. Like this is how far I've gone.
Wow.
With my revision. Although the ones that are blue are the point of view of Petra and a couple of the priests that I still have to go back, because I've just been focusing on the Angelica part. So I do have to go back and do those. But as you can see, I'm making progress. I didn't make quite as much this week as I wanted to, mostly because I'm still sick, and it because I had a stuffed up sinuses, I couldn't use my CPAP machine, and because I wasn't using my CPAP machine, I was having some problems with being tired. But yeah, so that I'm just going to continue with that, and I'm going to have a decision made by next Thursday at midnight about what my nano is going to look like how I'm going to count and all that stuff. And then I'm going to do whatever it is that I got to get done for my first day of nano there and at midnight. So whether it's 1667 words edited or written, I don't know yet.
All righty. Good job. Good job, Tina. I know it's been really hard for you, and you're almost to the finish line. So way to go. All right. Take it away, Jen. What have you decided?
I've decided that I am going to attempt Nano, which I had already kind of mentioned. And by next week's podcast, I will have my isolation booth complete. So that's what I'm going to be working on this whole week. So I probably won't be writing still, but I'm going to be working on the isolation booth for my my novel, the Widows of the West novel that I'm going to work on. So that will be behind me for the next episode. I also will be showing up at midnight with the rest of you, which that's a big deal for me. If you've been watching
Yeah,
this
just
podcast,
showing up counts, even if you don't write a word.
because if you've been watching this podcast for more than even a month, you'll know that I am a early bird, not a night owl like the other three. So it's usually pretty comical. I get kind of goofy when it's late. I also would like to maybe do some Facebook Lives. If with any of you ladies that would like to do that, we could get on Facebook and talk about our progress with our finishing up our prep. So that would be kind of cool. Maybe Rhonda, we could do one where you talk about how you've been doing your note cards and whatnot. So that's my accountability. That's my goal. We got some chat going on in the chat too. Barbie asked, midnight Friday, not Thursday. Nope, it's midnight Thursday, meaning at 12:01 when it becomes
November
NaNoWriMo,
1st.
when it's November 1st, that's when we will start. So we might, we had a chat about it. The ladies and I have not talked, but maybe we'll be going on at 11 or 11:30 so we can do a little bit of chatting before we start writing on Thursday night. But at 12:01 for sure, we start, 12 midnight and 1 second, we will start writing because it's finally November.
Okay, just real quick, Maria put her accountability up. She's in my accountability corner. Made some good progress with editing my third novel this week. From today, my hubby and I are off for a few days, ready for Nano to start on Friday.
Oh, great. Does your husband write too? Is that what she's meaning? Or is it just because she's saying she's going to spend some time giving her husband some attention before she gets absorbed into the crazy that is NaNoWriMo, right?
Yeah, we all have to kind of do that, right? Husbands or kids, prep some food, right? Like, because we kind of become like, leave me alone, it's Nano.
You get out the crock pot. Yep. Okay. Did everybody say?
Just one more
Did
thing,
you?
Maria. I don't care that it's 5 a.m. your time and you think you won't be productive. If you show up, we will make you productive. Come on, girl. You can be there.
You could do it, Maria.
You
We
can
You
believe
can
in
do
you.
it.
Mm-mm.
And are we going to write until we have 1667 or are we just going to do, we'll have to talk about it. So immediately after we sign off here, we're probably going to flesh out exactly what will happen. Keep an eye out on social media for updates about what that's going to look like, so that you can join us and you too can start off your November with a bang and with some fun and shenanigans with me and the ladies of the podcast here. So, okay, what else? Anything else? We're a little over. So have we said everything? Did we get through everything in the chat? I know everybody has been being very active and we're sorry that we can't address every comment, especially me, because I just can't pay attention that way. I don't know. Like, first of all, I keep losing the window, whatever. So we're very sorry if we didn't like say on air what your comment was. We do read them and we do appreciate your participation. And we hope that you'll tell our friends about our podcast if you like it, and don't forget to like and subscribe so that we know you're there. All right, if there's nothing else, ladies, nothing. Okay, this concludes this episode of the Christian Indie Writers Podcast. So until next week, may your pen be prolific, may your deadlines be met, and may all of your words honor Christ. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye, everyone.